Let's talk about common problems with internal dialogue. I'm Karen Beer with Right Now Editing, where we turn good manuscripts into great books.
And I'm Peg Thomas, award-winning author and editor, and we are two editors for 5 minutes.
And this topic is something that Peg has wanted to talk about for a while now, because we've both been seeing in manuscripts and in some published books some issues with internal dialogue that are pulling readers out of the story, maybe slowing it down a bit. And there are two different things that we're noticing because we're different people, so they kind of rub us differently.
That's
Peg,
right.
what's the big thing that you're seeing in internal dialogue that's making it difficult for you to read it?
One common mistake I see is the use of italics and when to use it and how often to use it. And when we use italics in internal dialogue, and in internal dialogue, we're just mean that you're writing out the character's inner thoughts. And if you're writing in third person, which most of us do, it's absolutely appropriate to keep in third person when you're in those internal dialogues. But when you get to a point in the internal dialogue where it is emphatic, when it's something that is so deep in their head, you actually will switch to first person and that will be italicized. So for instance, somebody is maybe running away from danger and suddenly they see something up ahead that could be the police coming or whatever. Safety is ahead, and their internal thought might be, it's about time. That's actually now switching into first person present. It's not, it was where it is. And you're going to put that in italics because that is just that immediate visceral gut reaction that they're having in themselves. It can be something that a character who is taking a fall off a horse, hits the ground, hears a crunch, knows their leg is broken, and the internal thought is, this is going to ruin things for me now. Where again, you're slipping into that real, but almost want to call it ultra in-depth thoughts. You're going to put that in parentheses or in italics, and that's going to switch into first person present because that clues the reader to how important that is. Now, you're only going to use this in extreme cases with the character. Most of their internal dialogue is still going to be third person. And it should be a deep third person, but it's still going to be third. You're only going to use this. You can call it a gimmick, you can call it a trick, you can call it something out of your toolbox, however you want to call it. But you're only going to use this when you really, really want to emphasize how important this thought is.
Well, I think what you said right there is what it is it's a thought. It's not just the internal dialogue. I mean, we're always thinking. We always have thoughts, going through our heads, and your characters do too. But occasionally there is that thought that, as Peg said, it just jumps. It's got a lot of emphasis or a lot of emotion. And that's when you switch from that dialogue to a thought that needs to be in italics. I've also seen, and I know Peg has seen this I usually see in manuscripts more so than published books. Anytime your character is thinking, people are putting it in italics. And that's too much because it's not all a thought. Sometimes it's just the mind wandering. It's that internal dialogue. So when you're in even first person, third person deep, most of it's going to be written regularly. It's only going to be that really intense thought that you want to italicize because you want it to be emphasized to your reader.
It's almost like a gut reaction. When you have that gut reaction thought, when something hits you and just triggers that, that's the type of thought you're going to put into italics and you're going to slip into that first person.
Now, the internal dialogue concern that I've been seeing a lot is just too much of it, especially in dialogue. I'm seeing this all over the place where character A says one line and then there's 3 sentences of reflection. And then character B says one line and then there's 3 more sentences of reflection. And what happens is by the time you get to the end of the page, first of all, the characters have only said 5 or 6 sentences total, but it's taken an entire page to bring this conversation out.
And
that
we call
slows
that what?
down.
We call that slowing down the story.
It slows it down. It's very rarely needed. But it's overwhelming. You want to make sure that there is enough internal dialogue that your reader can feel what's going on. Editing a book right now, and I keep putting little things in there. What's your character feeling while this is happening? Like, this is a really tense situation. What's his gut reaction? So there are times when you definitely want to have that in there. Show me what the character is thinking as someone stealing is watching someone steal his car. But you don't want to sacrifice the pace of your story by including so many thoughts and reflections that it just starts to drag.
Yes.
And I
You
don't have
want
a
your
timer.
dialogue. You want your
Mhm.
external dialogue. You want your dialogue between characters to be realistic and crisp. If you're slowing it down with your internal dialogue, then it's hard for the reader to follow the character's dialogue. They kind of get lost. By the end of the page, you're like, what were they talking about at the beginning? I don't know what was said. And you want to avoid that. You want your character's dialogue to be crisp and clean and move along and still have some emotions, some thoughts in there where appropriate, but not clog it up.
And I forgot to set the timer, but I am watching the clock on the computer, and our 5 minutes are up. So we'll see you
You're going
next
so
week. I'm Karen
fast.
Deary.
And I'm Peg Thomas. See you
We'll see
next
you.
time.